Okay, my name is Akshita Kumar, and I research natural disasters and climate gentrification. Okay, so natural disasters are a result of imbalances in the environment. Some examples of natural disasters are earthquakes, hurricanes, and tornadoes. These are all caused by environmental factors such as erosion, changes in ocean current, and global warming. Global warming specifically is the main reason for climate change and the cause for most natural disasters. As we all know, global warming has been on the rise recently, and this is causing an increase in natural disaster, and that's what this graph here shows. Okay, so there are obviously several environmental impacts of natural disasters, but I'm going to focus on one economic impact, and that's climate gentrification. Climate gentrification is a phenomenon in which a community is affected by a natural disaster, so then they move to another community, and they take over that community, so the people that were originally living in that community are forced to move out of their homes, and they're displaced. This is a common occurrence that resulted from the Haiti earthquake that occurred in 2010. Okay. The Haiti earthquake was one of the deadliest earthquakes in history. The earthquake led to the death of an estimated 230,000 people, as well as displacement and severe injuries of tens of thousands or more. Many of these displacements were due to gentrification. There's a specific area in Haiti called Morne L'Hôpital, and it's a steep mountain that was the most affected by the earthquake. So the people that were living here, they moved to nearby villages, and this caused displacement of the people that were originally living in that village. And these people had nowhere to go, so they eventually died off. Another more recent natural disaster was Hurricane Irma, which occurred in 2017. This hurricane mainly affected people living on the island of Bermuda. The island was basically demolished after the hurricane struck, and the entire population had to evacuate. Several people were forced to live in facilities and shelters, and the resilience and positive attitudes of the people helped them survive in these sheltering homes. The government started funding for an island recovery. Millions of dollars went into renewing the island and improving resiliency. Unfortunately, the island started attracting wealthier outside residents. Several non-Barbudan residents started moving into the island and taking over the homes of the inhabitants. This quote talks about how Barbudans' access to the land was tightly restricted, and many were unable to go back to their homes. This caused further displacement of inhabitants of the island. Okay, so this actually became a whole cycle. The renewing of communities attracted wealthier outside residents, so then when outside residents moved in, the property value increased, and so the original inhabitants couldn't go back to their land because they lost everything because of the natural disaster, and they couldn't afford to move back. From this, it can be concluded that climate gentrification negatively impacts inhabitants of a community due to the displacement it causes. Okay, so a possible solution to this problem are recovery programs that fund structural mitigation. Structural mitigation is basically just building buildings and structures that would help protect a community from the effects of a natural disaster. This is similar to what the Barbudans did. The government could help fund a recovery program that would initiate the building of these structures. There are some implications to this solution, the first one obviously being funding. It's not guaranteed that the government would provide money to fund structural mitigation. Building these structures would cost a lot of money, and a lot of work would need to be put into it. Another limitation would be getting the land. So building these structures require land, and it's not guaranteed that the land would be provided. The final limitation would be the maintenance that these structures require. After being built, these structures need to be checked to make sure they're still safe, and that may also require money, which is not guaranteed. To conclude, climate gentrification negatively impacts inhabitants, and this could be resolved with recovery programs and structural mitigation. Although there are some downsides to structural mitigation, it could be successfully done with the effort of the government.
Thank you very much. I have two questions for you. How did your research question evolve as you moved through the research process? Did the research go in a different direction than you originally planned?
So when I first started researching, my research question was, to what extent do inhabitants of a community display resilience after a natural disaster? And so when I researched this topic, I didn't know what climate gentrification was before I started the whole research process. So when I started researching, I found out what gentrification was, and then I decided to make that my research question and how climate gentrification affects a community.
Okay. And then lastly, how did you use the conclusions and questions of others to advance your own research?
So like I mentioned, the Barbudans, they had recovery programs, and in my solution, I talked about how a recovery program could fund structural mitigation.
Okay. Thank you.